good morning, everyone. I tried to think strategically this morning about whether I should go before Neil or after Neil. And then I kind of realized either way I'm going to lose, because there's no way you can match the experience and the knowledge that he brings to your industry. And so we're all well served by Neil. And so I will only try to do my best in following him up to talk with a little bit about your other industry organization, which is the Pork Checkoff, and what we've been doing over this past year. And so one of the first places that I want to talk a little bit is just a real quick overview about our belief and our messages. One of the biggest changes, I think, is if you listened in my biography there, I was with the Pork Board early on as their CFO, went out and worked in the production industry. One of the biggest things that I've seen evolve coming back just since July is the commitment to the measurement of our programs, and trying to take more of the things that we invest your checkoff money in and really coming up with hard numbers to measure and how we use that. And so that's really something that Chris Novak and the board have really taken a real commitment to, and I hope you'll see in this presentation as we go forward in the future that you'll see more measurement of the difference that the checkoff is making. And again, our intent is to have a meaningful difference, a measurable difference in your productivity and the success of your operations. Couple of our key messages clearly, and we'll talk about this more, is pork is clearly hot, and that's what we're talking with our customers and consumers about. The Pork Inspired campaign I'll talk a little bit more about has been in place for about 9 months and is really starting to resonate and catch hold with the target audience that we're doing with that campaign. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then also, as Neil covered, the success that we're seeing in the export markets and the percentage of increase that we're seeing on exports truly demonstrate this progress that we're making. The other key message I want you, and this is one that comes more to my area of the checkoff, is really about our message that we're delivering to our customers and consumers about that this industry is very committed to continuous improvement. And again, in my opening introduction, you'll see that you heard that continuous improvement was one of the things that I was responsible for in my previous job, and have some training in that, in being able to make sure that we communicate to consumers and our customers that we are continuously turning the wheel to try to make this a better industry, more responsive to their needs, but also continuing to improve our practices on the farm. And so some of the things that we'll talk about today is a little bit of an update on PQA Plus and where that's going in the future as well. And then the third main point, and again, Neil alluded to it, is your industry's investment in the U.S. Farm and Ranch Alliance, and some of the things that we hope to bring out of that investment, which is really to start bringing more voices to the table and more actively engaging and influencing consumers on their perspective of pork and our production and the way it's produced in the U.S. So when I have a really short period of time, we go through and talk about a top 10 list, and so I just want to hit we put this top 10 list together just about what are the quick hit results of 2011, and we'll start off at the bottom, do a little bit of a David Letterman thing here. So 82 on 25. As you know, 2011 was the 25th anniversary of the Pork Checkoff, and we do an annual survey of producers, a statistical survey of producers since I think in the late 1990s, and we've been tracking producers' support of the checkoff. And for 2011, that number was 82% of the producers surveyed had a positive view of of the checkoff programs and what was being done with the checkoff investment each year. If you look back at when we started that, and it was soon after the separation between MPPC and the Pork Board, back in the late 1990s, that number was down, not struggling to be over 50%. And so 82% is a record high, and the messages are resonating with producers, I think, on how their checkoff dollars are being used. So we want to continue to thank you for your support, and let you know that you have our commitment to continue to try to earn that support as we go forward into 2012. Another thing that producers have really told us about is that they're concerned about the long-term viability of their state associations. We have 42 different state associations still in operation across this country. Certainly one of the most healthy ones and well supported is here in Iowa, but we have a lot of other states where the hog numbers have really dwindled. The concentration of who is involved in terms of the producers in those states has dwindled. And so producers were concerned about that. And while a portion, and again, approximately 20% of the national checkoff revenue goes back to support those state associations, there were still a lot of producers in smaller states who were really concerned about their long-term viability. And so we conducted a number of regional meetings and have made a real commitment over this last year to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure that producers still have a viable state organization to connect to. And so we completed that work and have put in place a number of programs and support from the national level for those state associations. A very tiny carbon footprint. When Chris Novak does this presentation, he likes to make the font really small so you can almost not see it. But one of the things that we've really needed to be responsive to, and that you hear a lot more discussion about, not only about our industry, but across the country, is sustainability. And the first place that we started for the pork industry was in terms of doing a measure of our carbon footprint. So there's a lot of folks out there critical of animal agriculture, how it contributes to the overall carbon footprint, the carbon emission, the CO2 gases that we have in the United States. So we did that study, and we discovered that 0.3% or 0.3% is what the pork industry contributes to the overall gas emissions that are generated within the United States. You compare that with dairy that's at about 3%. And so we really have a good story to take back to consumers about what pork production means in this particular area. And it also leads us into our next area that we'll be looking at is also the water usage and how we impact the water availability within the United States from the pork industry. The best defense. This is a study this is really alluding to the fact that we undertook a vulnerabilities assessment. I struggle with that one a little bit. It was really to take a look not only internally but with our partners and customers, talking about what do we think are the biggest risks for the pork industry as we go forward, thinking forward for 10 and 20 years. What are the things that we need to be thinking about and addressing now so that we can try to mitigate those? And so we accumulated a long list. We made a top 10 out of that list. And just to talk briefly, the number one concern or vulnerability for the industry is deemed to be the risks that we have for a foreign animal disease to come into this country. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing around crisis preparedness, things that we can do to try to make sure that we minimize the potential impact if something like that should ever occur that would impact the industry. Quality assurance, as I mentioned, the PQA Plus program. I'll have some more slides that'll talk about this a little bit later, but we've touched over 53,000 different producers now with the PQA Plus certification program. Just went over 80% of all hogs on inventory at any time in this country are on site-assessed farms, and so we've made some really notable progress. And it is a program that our customers continue to rely on when the issues of undercover videos come up and other questions come back from customers about what do you know about the meat that you're selling us and the practices that are being deployed to produce it. A lot of success in the demand enhancement area, and probably the big one that hopefully many of you have seen that go around to your Subway shops or your Quiznos is the presence of the shredded pork or pulled pork product within these quick serve environments. And so the minute that we started promoting and had it in one, it just started being offered in really across that whole area within the quick serve market. And I'll also be talking a little bit more about some of the promotions that we're doing with the larger retailers and the success that we've had with that program. Back on track for another record, and then again, Neil really did a wonderful job of hitting this with the export numbers. We're projecting we'll end the year at 23% of all the muscle meat produced in the United States will be exported, and that number grows to 27% when you include the variety meats. So another record year in terms of exports. The USFRA investment, which I'll talk about further. The Pork Be Inspired, which was launched this last year and is off to a great start. And then finally, 145 is right on. And I think Neil briefly talked about it. It was really a joint effort of many parties, but certainly I think that we're only beginning to see the real impact of what 145 will really mean for the use of pork in the United States. As you think about, as more cookbooks, as more meat thermometers, as more folks start getting adjusted to this and the eating experience that they'll have with our pork products as they start to cook at the 145 versus the 160, I think we're only starting to see what some of the positive impacts will be from that change. So we're very much on the front side, and I think a lot of positive will come from that change. So just to talk a little bit more about the domestic marketing effort and Pork Be Inspired. The new brand has been well received. Just to remind you, Pork Be Inspired is targeted at a very specific component of the U.S. consumer, and that's really the 23% of consumers who already use pork. They're comfortable in cooking at least one or at least two different dishes with pork, and it's really about expanding our reach into that target audience. And so if you think about the money that we have available to us to put towards a campaign like this, we have to be very targeted, especially when you compare it to the percentages of advertising and investment that other companies and other commodities can make. When you compare it with, I believe that's a $400 million milk budget that they work from. And so with the dollars that we have available for pork, we have to be very, very targeted and very specific. And I think this program has done a very nice job of doing that. You've seen 4 months during this last year where pork was back on TV. It was in the morning shows when the moms are at home getting the kids ready to go to school. It's on the Food Network. It's on the DIY and the other types of cable shows where the very specific target audience that we're going after, folks who know how to use our product already and we want to inspire them to use it more. And we're really starting to see through our tracking data, just 9 months into the program, an impact on their usage of pork products. So off to a good start, 9 months into it, and as I think we continue to get more time, we'll see more about the impact that this new campaign is having. Want to talk just a little bit about promotions with major retailers, and following up on, in 2010, we did a major investment with Kroger in terms of getting on board with them with a very integrated program of promotion with them, and had great success with it. And so we followed up in 2011 doing the same thing with Costco in the month of October. We actually have a plan where we work with a specific retailer once every quarter throughout the year. And so integrating all of the things, not only that they do in-house, but also utilizing social media like Twitter and Facebook, and their in-house promotions. Probably the most meaningful thing that we can bring back to you that really demonstrates it are direct quotes from that customer, which was that they saw record results, over 25% increase for the month of October during that promotion for pork being sold within Costco. And so that was a 1 month picture. So what do we hope that comes out of that? So obviously you want folks to continue to have that experience. You want Costco to continue to do some of that promotion on their own as they go forward, and they're already excited about talking with us about following up here in this year when we'll also do our fourth quarter promotion. Again, will be with Costco. Talked a little bit before about the measurables that we want to try to have for you about what is the payback for these investments. And one of the things that we've evolved to in terms of measuring the impact of our programs in the demand area is on moving capital pork expenditures. And I think historically you would have heard us talk about volume increases or moving the demand index. Per capita pork expenditures bring in the two major components. They bring in not only the volume that we sell, but the price that we sell that product for. And so if you really think about it, if we're just moving a lot of volume for not a very good price, that's not really the best interest for our industry or for you as producers or for our customers. But if we're actually being able to support that volume with a good price, then really that's really what our long-term goal is. And so our long-term goal in this area is to increase per capita consumption or per capita pork expenditure number by 10% by the end of 2014. So we've got this, the plan is in place to continue to move this. For 2011, you can see that through September, that number was up by 3.8%, supported very much by the strong pork prices that we've seen. The last 2 months, if you updated this, it's actually fallen back a little bit, but for the year, we're still up over 1% for the year. So we're starting down that path. One of the challenges in this measure is the fact that it wasn't necessarily in October and November that folks weren't as interested in our product. It was more about the fact that more of our product actually was going overseas, and so there was more of a scarcity of our product being promoted in the domestic market because of the increase that we saw on the export side. I'm not going to cover too much more because Neil did a really nice job on the export market in terms of how important it's been. We'll easily pass the $5 billion number in terms of value. I've already told you the percentages, 23% in muscle meat, 27% in when you include all meats. Neil quoted 50. He does a nice job of rounding. 50. Ours is 54.68. He said $55. So the value per head of the export market to the U.S. industry has grown consistently every year, I believe, over the last 18 years. And even as we go forward, particularly as he highlighted with the opportunities in South Korea, with the new FTA, as well as the increase that we've seen in the business with China, the stability that we've had in markets like Japan and Mexico as long-term partners, we anticipate a 3 to 4% increase in this number over the next few years. Now that's all the demand side, which I'm not the expert in, but I hope that I could talk a little bit more intelligently about one of the areas that is directly in my responsibility working with the pork checkoff, and that is in this area of continuous improvement, and specifically with your PQA Plus program. As I mentioned before, since just tracking the increase in the participation in PQA Plus, just under 54,000 folks across the pork industry are now PQA Plus certified, and we just passed 80% of our U.S. swine inventory being on site assessed sites. And so with the efforts that our state associations have made, with the requirements and the consistency that we're getting from the packers in following up and making sure that folks have both their PQA certification as well as their site assessed, we've been able to push this number to a new all-time high, and we've really seen a nice movement in this last year in terms of that percentage. As we go through and we look at PQA Plus as a program and what are we learning from those site assessments that are performed, this wording is tough to see, but the big things that we're seeing about where are we a little bit lower, where do we have some opportunities in those site assessments, is really in the area of on-site record keeping that's maintained by the producer as they go through the site assessments. And so in the area of, do you have documented medical and treatment records? Do you have documented your daily visit to the farm? That's where the opportunity is. It's not that those things aren't occurring, it's just that they're not documented. And so one of the things you'll see up at the trade show that we're doing throughout the year as we talk with producers and we go to the trade shows, we've got a flash drive that we're really trying to emphasize. Here's the forms that you need to be able to have that documentation on your site. And so while those are lower areas, probably in the 75 to 80%, there's opportunity for us to increase. And again, the issue is not that producers aren't doing these things, it's just that they're not documenting them. And so it's really what we're trying to emphasize, particularly as we go into the next revision of PQA Plus, and we have a lot of folks who will start to be recertifying here, starting on their 3-year certification on our program starting here later in 2012. Some of the real positives I would say that we've learned from the site assessments is that there was a lot of concern about body condition scoring and space available to the animal on farms. You know, a lot of folks assuming that we're packing too many animals into too little space and that we've got a lot of body condition issues, particularly in the breeding herd. And what we discovered is that as our advisors went out and did those checks, producers are doing a great job in making sure that pigs have enough space, that they are being properly taken care of and treated, particularly within the breeding herd. So percentages of their nearly 95%. So I think kudos to producers who are doing the right things and obviously demonstrating that in terms of their care for the animals, and the big opportunities really in just in terms of doing a little bit better job in documentation. So I mentioned that we are currently working through a revision of PQA Plus. It will be released at World Pork Expo 2013, so that's still a year away. But probably the most important thing that that I can talk with you about is the area of expansion of PQA will be to where it's traditionally been focused on pork safety and animal well-being. We're continuing to emphasize, we'll continue to obviously emphasize those areas, but we're also going to introduce a couple of the other areas of our We Care initiative, our ethical principles, that those are also emphasized and covered within the PQA Plus training that we provide to producers and their employees. And so, again, as I mentioned, animal welfare and food safety being traditional areas, but also expanding now the education to cover the importance of the environmental effect of our production activities, as well as worker safety. We have big opportunities in the area in particular in terms of worker safety, and it's one of the real focus areas for my group as we go forward to try to provide more resources to producers to make sure that their workers come to work and go home in the same condition every day. And again, as I mentioned, a rollout date by 2013. I mentioned briefly the sustainability effort. The carbon footprint is the first step in that. This next year will also be, as I mentioned, talking about the impact of the pork industry has on water usage and conservation within the United States. And eventually we'll also get to the land and the air components of sustainability as well. And so this is really in direct response to a lot of customer questions, a lot of consumer questions that are coming beyond just how we're producing the product, but also the impact that we're having on the environment around us. And so we'll continue to move those efforts forward. Then the kind of leading into the last component of what I wanted to cover today was really just to talk about this area of gaining consumer trust. It really is a new investment area for the checkoff industry that's only continued to, or for the pork industry, utilizing checkoff funds that's continued to grow over the last several years. And probably the first one, beyond our certification programs of TQA and PQA, then you would go, the next step was really with Operation Main Street. Very proud of the fact that in December, we were able to say that over 5,000 speeches have been given to directly by producers, talking with consumers, talking with their neighbors about their pork operations and how, in reminding them that we're doing things right and that they have good partners in their communities when they think about the pork industry. Over 900 producers have been trained, and again, as I mentioned, just past 5,000 speeches have been given. The We Care ethical principles. We've kind of hit a plateau. When we do our producer survey, about 50% of our producers who respond say they're aware of the We Care program and the ethical principles, and a smaller percentage can actually quote one of those. We really need to try to continue to have your support in helping us get that message out about the importance of our industry, our producers, and our workers really understanding the components of We Care. And so it's clearly an area that you can help as we go forward. And it really leads into the other big investment that we've entered into for the pork industry this last year. Both the Pork Board and MPPC were early on involved with this effort that has now grown to, I believe, over 55 different organizations are now contributing to this effort to really create an opportunity for farmers across all the different products, across all the different disciplines, to really come together and start to combat some of the misinformation and misunderstanding that's out there amongst consumers today about modern agriculture. The early part of this investment and this effort has really been around trying to understand better about how consumers do react to the ways that we represent ourselves, not only in the pork industry, but again by other commodities that are produced in the United States. And one of the most important pieces of research that have been done are these focus groups that bring consumers together and get their reaction to the words that we use. And when we talk about language matters, it clearly shows that if we just tweak our messages are right, but if we tweak the words that we use a bit as we deliver those messages, the response that we get from those folks about how they feel about the work that we're doing can change drastically. And so rather than go through these individually, it's really just to point out that as we test these different messages with consumers, you can see that slight changes in the words that we use can make a real difference in how they receive that message. And so it really leads, so we've got this research done. As you know, we've had the 4 town hall meetings that occurred this past fall where we engaged folks from both sides in discussions across the country. It was really the opportunity to introduce the concept of what USFRA was about. We're in quarter 1 of this year. You've started to see, or you can start to see some of the vignettes and the videos that are available both on the USFRA online website as well as the fooddialogues.com website that really talk about the different, which are producers talking about what they do. And they're also occurring, and you're also able to see these on the Discovery Channel. Very good demonstrations, delivering information to consumers the way they want to see it, which is a YouTube, website, internet type of opportunity within, getting your message across within about a 3 or 4 minute video about what it's really like to be a producer today in the United States. The second quarter is really going to be about starting the effort to train, much like we did with OMS in the pork industry, key farmers and ranchers across this country to be able to engage consumers on an ongoing basis about what's going on in modern agriculture in the U.S. And so all of that research that talked about using the right words and how to engage producers, how to go out to chat rooms, to utilize blogs, other areas that particularly younger consumers are going to identify those folks who can actively start to engage. And because this is really an effort about making people more aware as they get farther and farther away from being connected to the farm gate, being aware of what we're doing here in modern agriculture, and providing a different view than the ones who don't support us seem to have a very easy job of being able to do. So it's really meeting them at the consumer level, and that's really what the second quarter effort this year will be about. And the main goal is clearly just to bring more voices to the table. We have a good story to tell. We don't have anything that we need to not talk to them about. We need to be more proactive with them. They want to know more. They're reaching out, and we have to meet them and have those open conversations with them. And this is clearly one of the mechanisms that we have, in addition to the other things that we've talked about previously in terms of supporting and gaining more of that consumer trust. And finally, just to ask you as producers, what can you do to help support us? Clearly continuing to be supportive of our certification programs in terms of PQA Plus and TQA, and recertifying as those 3-year dates start to roll around. Make sure you go out and visit the tools that we have available for you in terms of the education and support and the support areas around some of these things, like having an emergency action plan, having a crisis management plan, nutrient management, all these things are resources that your Checkoff dollars have helped fund and are available. Make sure that your employees and affiliated workers are PQA Plus and TQA certified. And then finally, demonstrating your commitment to your communities around you. Really, that last principle of the ethical principles about being involved in your communities, reaching out, talking with them, becoming OMS certified, give some speeches, and engage the consumers locally. And as Neil, I think, kind of concluded, I think we're really coming into a very positive time for agriculture in the United States, with huge opportunities, not only within the pork industry, but across all of agriculture. We're also working very hard to continue to try to keep our youth connected and be resources for us going forward in the future. And I think we have a very positive outlook going forward as we go to the next 10 to 20 years.